Greetings and welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is officially the start of the 2021 football season for us. We are going to be doing this a little bit more regularly. The board behind me has drafts that are upcoming, so of course we'll be getting into our fantasy week stuff soon. But I am Flying Ryan along with, as always,
Tampa Motor Mel, Joel Verlin in the hoose.
and we are here to talk some stuff about the offseason. We are here to talk about Joel did a draft. He's going to have me look it over and either rip it to shreds or praise it, whichever one I feel is appropriate, which we will find out soon. And we're going to talk about some silliness and just get back into the flow of doing these things after several months of not doing these things. So, Joel, how you been? It's been a minute.
All right, doing pretty well. It was a little bit stormy because I think originally we had planned where we wanted to do the shuffle thingy last night, but Mother Nature sort of decided to say, "Hi, you're not going to be doing much of anything." So,
Yeah.
sort of, I don't know if you guys lost power for a little bit or not down there, but
No, it was heavy lightning and thunder, so just probably not the best idea. Also, I was taking work texts until about 7:30, so that kind of delayed it as well. Today I thought was going to be a later day than it was, but hey, we are here. It is 7:42 on the East Coast
it's
on August
always
10th.
it's always fun when you're trying to make microwave dinner and the power is going off and on. You're like, oh, yay.
Yes. So, anyways, Joel, I know you had something kind of unusual to bring up, a question that blends sports and pop culture in weird and wacky ways. I don't know where this is actually going. I only know kind of the premise. So Joel, let me have it.
Well, I was, because I know that Peyton Manning was definitely in the news because, of course, he was at the Hall of Fame and being Peyton, which is not a bad thing. And I was kind of curious because you hear everybody musing about, well, is he going to be a head coach? I know that's one of the possibilities. Another one was, of course, being a broadcaster. And then there was sort of an interesting possibility that one of the many, many, many things that was just sort of discussed and tossed out there was I was and kind of wondering, how far off the beaten path this one would be. What how much of a turn down reality this would take Peyton as the NFL commish. So, my question to you is, I'm going to go ahead and give you the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos, and with the power that you now possess, you can decide Peyton Manning's fate. So, do you want him as a head coach of any football team that's out there in the NFL? And who would you want to be as his quarterback? B, would you want him just to continue as a commentator and for what network? Or C, would you want to go down the Pandora's box of having Peyton Manning as the NFL commissioner?
With my all powerful Infinity Gauntlet abilities, I can actually make all three of these things happen. So I'll tell you what I think will happen. I think at first he is going to go into the broadcast booth. He's going to be great because he is hilarious. He's very knowledgeable in the game. And he'd be a good addition to ESPN, who's frankly had garbage coverage since I don't know, like the mid 2000s at a minimum. Not least of which Booger McFarland, which this little trophy is named for, the Booger McFarland Smartest Human Award. That's for picking league games really well. But anyways, just a little humble brag in there. I think he'll do that to start. ESPN in a good place. I know he's already got like Peyton's places on ESPN Plus, so he's got a relationship with the network, and he would be a drastic step in the right direction. And I could see him down the line being the commissioner. I think he's got the right mentality on growing the game, making sure that the kids that are coming up know how to play it correctly, know how to keep themselves safe, which will make parents a lot more willing to put their kids in a sport that creates brain damage. To each their own. I don't see him coaching. If he was going to coach, I'd love to see him coach like a Patrick Mahomes or somebody who's already got a great arm, but maybe the cerebral intelligence in the processing of the game that Peyton Manning has being imparted into someone like Patrick Mahomes would be just truly awe-inspiring to watch. But I could see him being the commissioner down the line. I kind of hope he does. He would just be a good one.
Because like out of all the three possibilities, the commission might be the most far fetched one, I think, for right now. But I would kind of hard to see him with all the money that he has from the 40 gajillion commercials he's done, wanting to go into the grind of being an NFL head coach with the ridiculous hours that would end up taking out of his current lifestyle. I would think see more the current job he has as the commentator, or sometime down the line as the NFL commission, as the one of the two more possibilities for Peyton.
Yeah, I think he'd be the first commissioner to not get booed every time he makes a public appearance, at least at first. He was very good in his speech. He's good at poking fun at people, but doing it in the right way. We've all seen him on television shows and his commercials. If you haven't seen the SNL skit where Peyton Manning is coaching like the United Way kids, go out of your way, find it on YouTube. It is absolutely hysterical. So whatever he ends up doing, I know he's going to do really, really well, which is another reason I think he'd be great as a commissioner, because he does not fail when he tries to do things with the football world. So with that being said, we are going to move into some off-season headlines. We're not going to highlight everything that happened. We're not going to chronicle the entire backstory of the
Oh,
Aaron Rodgers saga because,
this
well,
this whole and then that was just everything. You had all the dirty laundry that came out during the press conference, and I don't know, it was sort of an anticlimactic ending, especially flying, because you ended up having the little juicy rumor. It was a Saturday or Sunday that all of a sudden sports books were pulling this bet and pulling that bet back and forth, because of course they were thinking that Aaron Rodgers was going to retire. Apparently, there was some source out there, and then that was proved to not be true, as he ended up reporting, of course, to Packers training camp. And well, the great drama that fueled the entire offseason finally, I think, put to bed, especially with the clause that if he really doesn't like how things are done this year, he can be traded. So
yeah.
I think it's a win-win, since then the main villain seems to be the GM.
Yeah, I think this is going to fall on to the GM, Brian Gutenhurst, or however you pronounce his name. To long story short, Aaron Rodgers not happy with the GM in Green Bay, doesn't feel like he's done enough to build the team, some cultural issues. It's all about the people, and sometimes they forget about it. It was one of the quotes, or a paraphrasing of a quote that was said over the offseason. New contract extension or alteration, whatever you want to call it. He will be back with the Packers this year. After that, if he's not happy, they will trade him, but he will have a say in where he goes. Whereas this year, if they traded him, it was like, hey, guess what? Houston offered us the most stuff, so you can go be garbage with them, because Houston's going to be terrible this year if you don't know. So this is good for Aaron Rodgers. It's good for the Packers. The financials for this year actually freed up cap space, which may be used to sign Devontae Adams or a potential another weapon down the line. There are rumors about a certain wide receiver in New Orleans that we'll get to shortly, possibly being on his way out, amongst other things. And who knows, maybe Green Bay can find a way to weasel him into the role for this year. Only time will tell. It seems like, though, Aaron Rodgers, at least for now, 1 year, very settled after that, not so much.
Well, when you have one of the stories that fueled the entire offseason during the summertime that was just repeated endlessly and relentlessly ad nauseum, ad infinitum, of course, the other story was Deshaun Watson. And unlike the Aaron Rodgers story that we've apparently had a conclusion to, I think we can kind of put this one to bed. While it seems that the Deshaun Watson story sort of has a kind of a conclusion, because they're he's trying to look like he's practicing, and they're trying to act as if everything is normal, no problem. Not so much when you're looking at the injury reports, and it has Deshaun Watson injuries, legal problems. They're acting as if it's all normal and everything's no problem, and everything is sort of all up in the air as far as the legal things are concerned. But at any time, I think if you're thinking about him as opposed to reality football, if you're thinking about him as opposed to fantasy football, at any time the bomb can come down, and all of a sudden he ends up on the evil exemption list, and his future will be up and down. And there's a good chance that nothing can happen. But I don't know. There's just been so much legal shockwaves out there this year from everything that's happened. I would be very, very amazed if just all of a sudden everything is just dusted under the rug and you move on and one game suspension. I would be amazed if that's all that happens, or if nothing happens. Something has to happen because of everything that's gone on.
Yeah, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, there's only a handful of potential outcomes. I think the most likely is before the start of the season, he goes on the commissioner's exempt list. And whenever this comes to a head and gets resolved for the better or the worst, they will make a conclusion from there. If it's 10 weeks into the season and all of a sudden this is all settled, he may go, hey, you've served 10 weeks suspension. You're good. Just go back and play. The other one is it's kind of like Tom Brady with the deflated footballs, where they go, you're going to get your day in court. But
And that
until
actually
then,
helped Brady towards the end of the season.
but until then, you are going to be allowed to play. Right now, he's come to training camp, which is a surprise because before all of this, remember, he's like, Houston sucks. I want to leave. Get me out of here. And you had Miami, you had
He's
Philadelphia,
done a
you had
180.
Denver, Carolina, all in the mix with probably a few other
At
dark
least
horse
on the
contenders.
outside, he's done a 180.
So at least on the outside right now, I think he realizes that my trade value is garbage. He can't go out and just say, I don't want to be here, because it's like, okay, you're already in trouble. You're already probably getting suspended. And now you're going to come in with an even worse attitude towards the team you're a part of. I think he has to come in, save face. He might not want to be there, and I don't think he's going to be there for very long. I think the trade will happen at some point once his future is settled. The other possibility, other than immediate suspension and suspension down the road, is that this is like a Duke lacrosse situation where it was all fabricated. If you don't remember that story from 15 years ago, girl accused the Duke lacrosse team of rape. Turns out she made it 100% up. We do have a problem in some portions of pop culture and with the rich and famous where they will come out of the woodwork to try and tear someone down when something comes up. I'm not saying all 22 of these women are liars. I'm not saying any of these 22 women are liars, but I am saying if two of them are legitimate, the other 20 could be liars, or 20 could be legit and two could be liars. They could be out trying to get money and tear down someone's reputation. Unfortunately, that's something that does happen. I hope if Deshaun Watson is innocent and this is all made up, all of these women get what is coming to them, which is probably a nice hefty lawsuit back. And if they are truly the victims, then Deshaun Watson deserves to be punished to the fullest extent of the law, because what he did, what he's accused of doing, is just absolutely not cool, not acceptable, not something I'd want done to me. So I can understand where they wouldn't want this. That being said, I think the most likely outcome is commissioner's exempt list here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to let this ride. Maybe he sits out the whole season on the exempt list and they go, hey, if this comes through and you're cleared or you're found guilty or whatever it is, you can go back because you've already served your time.
The fantasy draft boards, and when you're looking at who's still available, is always a good indication of the current climate out there.
Yeah. Fun fact, drafting Deshaun Watson, not a great idea. Not until clarity is served. So on today, 8-10, I wouldn't draft him. Now, if you're in a deep 32-team league, all right, maybe you snipe him just in case. But most people are in 10 to 12-team leagues. Don't worry about it. He's going to be there. You can always bid for him on Fab or try and pick him off of waivers if that comes down to it. All right, next we'll get to a couple wide receiver stories. Let's start with the more happy one. Julio Jones traded to the Tennessee Titans for basically nothing, a couple picks. Joel, any thoughts on what this will do to the Titans to put them alongside with A.J. Brown and, of course, Derrick Henry in the backfield?
All that does is, I think, just sort of helps Derrick Henry out, helps out Tannehill, and that they've had problems, I think, with at times last year, be it being the the more one-dimensional of have everything depending upon Derrick Henry being an absolute tank, which he is. But now all of a sudden you have another huge, legit, a number one weapon in the hands of Tannehill and out there, and all that means is I think they can become a lot more dangerous than they already are.
Yeah, Julio is very, very dangerous still. I think with A.J. Brown, it's going to be even more so. But I do think the biggest benefit is to Derrick Henry, who led the league in rushing the last 2 years, over 2,000 last year. They now have to designate an extra player to cover Julio and A.J. Brown. They cannot single cover both of them to put 9, 8, even 7 in the box. They're going to have to, at times, spread out. If you have 3 people running a route, you have to have 4 or 5 in the secondary to really shut that down, and then Derrick Henry runs crazy.
The bigger story is not really what Julio Jones is going to do for the Tennessee Titans, is what is his absence going to do with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes. Now, Calvin Ridley performed admirably in Julio Jones's place last year when he was injured. He was one of the top receivers overall. I think for the first month and a half to 2 months of the fantasy football season, he was number 1 or in the top 5 at an absolute minimum for wide receiver productivity. So you do have that one coming into play. However, if you put a gun to my head and said, who is going to lead the Falcons in rushing? I would not have a good answer for you. Right now, I'd say Mike Davis, but they've brought in several other people, including Deontay Foreman, who hasn't been in the league for a while. They've got they've got nobody. They drafted someone who's Hawkins, I believe is the last name, bottom of the depth chart guy. Very easily could lead the team in rushing. Could be Cordero Patterson, who's been a jack of all trades in the NFL. So they don't have a running game they can depend on, is my entire point. Kyle Pitts will help. It's just going to be Hayden Hurst will help. Gage, Zacchaeus, and it's just outside of Ridley and maybe Pitts. Pitts has a lot of hype. He hasn't played a game yet.
So the running game will be the Pitts. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's going to be short passes to Pitts and Hurst, and then the deep passes to Gage and Ridley. Kyle Pitts, though, has so much hype. It's one of those, if he lives up to it, he's going to be one of the greatest tight ends of all time, and he has not taken a snap yet. I think it's wise to pump the brakes on that hype just to be a little realistic. First-year tight ends never do well, and he's coming in with the most pressure that's ever been on anybody in the position to perform right off the bat, not to mention he was the number 4 overall pick this year in the NFL draft. Yeah, so the loss in Atlanta, Kyle Pitts may be able to fill that in. I don't know exactly his role. Again, he hasn't taken a snap in a regular season or preseason game yet to watch. It's something definitely to be keeping an eye on this preseason.
We'll get ready for some more stellar defense from Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, that defense is still going to be terrible. Atlanta's going to be a bad team. I got to say, the Bucs have probably the easiest path to repeat, at least in their division, in a number of years. Even the Patriots, when they were having their dominance, usually one of the teams was somewhat competitive at times. Anyways, we'll move on to Michael Thomas, another NFC South wide receiver.
A team that was competitive, that their competitiveness will definitely be called into question big time this year.
Yeah, so the Saints have not had a great offseason. They lose Drew Brees to retirement.
Of course, you saw the video of Jameis Winston running into the mechanical tackling dummy.
Yes, if you haven't seen that video, that's great. It's, when you were in high school and you saw that thing with like the arms that come out and you got to run through it, all these guys running through it like adult men, and he goes through like a drunk cheerleader. It's funny because it's sad, but he's a professional football player somehow, and I'm talking about him. So yeah, it's either him or Taysom Hill as the starting quarterback going forward. Now they have defensive back problems because I think the only one is Marshawn Lattimore, who's healthy.
Alvin Kamara's fantasy value.
Alvin Kamara might be the only one viable because Michael Thomas is out with an injury, ankle surgery, and then he comes with the cryptic tweet. They come after your legacy because you protected their story or whatever it is. You don't tell your side of the story. Michael Thomas, I honestly am starting to believe doesn't want to play football.
That when you saw the story about that he ghosted the Saints for 3 months.
Yeah. If you wanted to play football, you get the surgery in April. You get surgery in March. You get the surgery when your season is over in January, not in the middle of June. Michael Thomas, I just think he's got nothing to prove. There are rumblings that he may or may not be traded because of his bad attitude. Linking him to Jacksonville has been one of the places I kind of speculated maybe Green Bay looks into it, because if he gets in good with Green Bay, that's a Super Bowl team for sure. They're pretty close as it is. I remember a couple of years ago, like the NFL memes page had Crybaby of the Year and gave it to Michael Thomas. And me and some of my friends were like, really, why would you give it to him? And I was like, oh, that's why, because it's true. Now, Joel, I know as a Bucs fan, you weep heavily for the Saints and Michael Thomas to not be on the field. It is keeping you up at night how much more easy your division is without him in it.
Maybe for fantasy, if you want to pick any of
Yeah.
them, that may keep you up at night. But as far as reality football goes, as a Bucks fan, you're just absolutely licking your chops. You're licking your lips. You're thinking you're going, Panthers, okay, they may be getting CMC back this year, but okay, Atlanta, no more Julio Jones threat. Saints, no Drew Brees. You're just thinking about the schedule and you're going, oh baby, is it possible? You're
Yeah.
just thinking about it because the Saints were when they had Drew Brees was definitely the Bucks' kryptonite. Especially we remember that Sunday night
Mm-hmm.
game that I think will
38-3.
be we remember that for a long time. Going, yeah, okay, we had. I have a feeling some Bucks may remember that this year, both times when they go back into New Orleans and when New Orleans decides to come down here. They may reacquaint the Saints and go, hi, remember us? Yeah, we're the champs. So
Yeah.
then they might greet them with some home style cooking of their own.
Yeah. It'll be interesting for sure. We are 30 days from the season opener for the Bucks when they play the Cowboys to raise their banner.
It
But
is so
again,
nice. It is so nice after the long, hot, dark, long, endless summer to finally be talking football.
yes, it is good to be
Talking
back.
football, not about the draft, not about what's happened, but we're
Not about the
thinking
drama
about
for quarterbacks who are playing.
schedule.
Yeah. So yeah. As I mentioned, no Michael Thomas, Julio Jones out of the division. Of course, the Bucks returning all 22 starters from last year's Super Bowl team. I wonder who's going to
including
be the favorite
a
in that division.
including a B,
Yes.
unbelievably enough.
Yes. And then we have
Who has turned into a model citizen.
yes, the desire to not to go to prison and be sued constantly might have a part of that. Also, Tom Brady might have said, get your act together, or you're going to be out of here." All right, and then the last two, we're just going to kind of talk at the same time. Carson Wentz with a foot injury and
And
Cam
anytime
Akers.
somebody like tries to talk back to Tom Brady, he just sort of shows him, "Hi, my rings." Enough said. Yo,
Yeah, yeah. So next up, we'll just talk quickly the Carson Wentz and the Cam Akers injury. Wentz with a bone /
ooh,
ligament issue in his foot, genetic condition that he's having surgery on. Then Cam Akers with the ruptured Achilles is donezo for the season
Carson
already.
Wentz. Carson Wentz's just rough career taking a very bad turn, and then of course you have just Cam Akers, an injury in training, just one of the absolute worst ways to end your season. Just heartbreak for the Rams, a heartbreak for fantasy,
Yeah.
heartbreak for football, and just oh, you had so much promise this year with last year just building, and then that happens. Just sort of, talk about the wind out of the sails. It's like it's just the sail is ripped down.
Yeah, we'll start with the worst injury first. Cam Akers was very severe, a ruptured Achilles. That's something that some running backs do not come back from. Modern medicine, I think he'll be fine long term, but he was one of the guys this season I was very high on fantasy wise. It was someone I was actually targeting. If I had an early second round, mid second round pick, I was hoping he was there. And now all of a sudden that is off the board. So I'm looking at new strategies just around this one injury alone. As far as Carson Wentz goes, he'll be back. When is the question? There is also the compensation to the Eagles for this trade. If he plays a certain number of snaps or certain percentage of snaps, that becomes a first round pick.
This portion of Wentz's career is not exactly going to be looked in the highlight films.
Yeah, I think he's going to be good for the Colts when he plays. This injury apparently is something that's kind of been around genetically for a while, and now it finally just came to the surface quite literally. But that being said, I could see them saying, hey, Carson, let's take this first 6 weeks off. Why is that? Because if he doesn't play 75% of the snaps, part of the trade with the Eagles is not a first-round pick. I think it's a second-round pick instead, which would hurt them short-term because obviously more picks is better. Also, they have 3 first-round picks next year if this one upgrades, and they could go to Houston and try and get the aforementioned Deshaun Watson. That is tougher when you only have 2. Now, of course, they can mortgage the future further, but if you get rid of 3 first-round picks in the same year and Jalen Hurts and get someone who's led the league in passing last year, it's hard to argue that logic. So, next, quickly, behind me is our draft schedule. Right now, some of them are to be determined. We will be going over our draft week prep after this. Right now, I've got it tentatively starting on Friday, August 20th with kind of a recap of last season. And then following a similar structure to what we did last year, we go over, a couple talks, a couple positions a day for the first 2, a general draft strategy, a mock draft, and then our live drafts of the 10 and 16 team leagues, which are shown up top behind me, 8:27 at 6:30 and at 8 p.m. So you can watch those. I will be in Massachusetts and trying to film this between 2 different laptops. I have been working with Joel. We did a little podcast where we picked our draft numbers in the box. Remember the box? Yeah, the box. We did our draft lottery. We got our kinks worked out for that. We've got our draft order in place. But the big part of that was testing the equipment for multiple laptops and multiple
It wasn't
computers.
quite the Hogwarts sorting hat, but
oh, that would be great. Just put it on your head and think of a name. It's like 7th. You're like, screw you. You got 7.
No, you're going to Slytherin.
Oh, I don't look good in green. Anyways, not important. But the top 2 are what we're going to be live covering again, Sports Shuffle fans and League of Winning. Neither one of us did particularly well in these last year, so we'll see if we can turn around. But the one in the middle is a brand new league. Some friends and I are starting called a Vampire League. It is primarily with people up north, which is why Joel is not in it. It was not my league to form. I already run 2 leagues and help with a third, so I'm good on that. But Joel, I know you've heard a little bit about a Vampire League. Is it something you'd ever think you'd have interest in based on what you know? We'll go over kind of what it is here in a second.
I think I've heard the term because I've heard Guillotine League. I know.
Yes,
I've heard Vampire Leagues, and so maybe you can go ahead and explain a little bit. How does a Vampire League differ from your basic normal league?
All right. So first of all, just to mention Guillotine League, which is not related, basically everybody will draft, and the worst player after I think the 3rd week, it depends on how many teams, in total points is cut. And you go until you get to the last 2 teams. That's a Guillotine League. I don't really think it works for anything I'd want to do, but that's what that works. A regular draft, everybody drafts their lineup, and then you go through the season and you drop how you wish. But it gets stale if you do enough of them. The Vampire League is a little bit different. This one will be a 10-team league. We are going to do a drawing just like we did for our Sports Shuffle and League of Winning leagues. Whenever the last person actually joins. The link is out there, just not able to figure out a link, which is confusing, but it happens. That being said, I was very confused why a link wouldn't work. But that being said, what happens is when we draw all of the names and numbers, we will draw just one number of the draft pick, and that number will be our vampire and will not draft, which sounds weird. What happens with the vampire is they will either not draft or they'll draft like all kickers, all backup quarterbacks, just kind of fill the lineup with nothing. The other 9 people will draft, but at the end of that time, they cannot make roster moves for the rest of the season, or at the very least, the Vampire will have the priority on all moves based on fab budget. I believe in this league, they get 50 uncontested claims, which 50 in a season seems like a lot. So, yeah. And from there, the Vampire builds a team off the waiver wire post draft. And then if they beat another team in the league, the Vampire can select any player from the opponent's starting lineup, which plays into some of the strategy here. Any player from the opponent's starting lineup, if they beat them, they can take, no questions asked, in a position for position trade. So, hypothetically, week 1, you play the guy with, let's say, Dalvin Cook. Your number 1 running back is Nyheim Hines, and you find a way to win because you got the rookie sensation at wide receiver and a quarterback that just went absolutely crazy in week 1. You can trade Nyheim Hines for Dalvin Cook, no questions asked, and you leech like a vampire sucking blood from the other opponents. Now, the key to it is you have to win early to get a stacked lineup. Once you get enough wins, you can really run the league. It's just tough to get started. The other caveat that I like is the strategy of, well, I'm playing the Vampire, so if I bench my studs, they can only suck a player out of my starting lineup. I can't go and say, oh, well, he had Pat Mahomes on the bench and he had, Christian McCaffrey on the bench and he had Travis Kelce on the bench. Nope. I started Austin Hooper. I started David Carr, Derek Carr, whatever his name is. You can start lesser players in an effort to beat a lesser team, but you could protect your bigger players. The Vampire's job is, just like every other team, to win games and get in the playoffs and win the league. But every time they win, they can steal a player from another team. So it's going to be interesting. It's a first-time thing. And then after the first year, the champion will pick the new Vampire. Cannot be the same Vampire or the champion. So it'll be interesting that way. And, of course, being the fattest guy in the league, I took the name Count Chocula. Because it had to be vampire-themed. And, frankly, if you're the biggest guy in the league, you kind of have to take the cereal name.
No, Cocoa Puffs just doesn't have that quite.
It's not vampire-y, that's all. Like, it has to be a vampire name. Like, one of them is Team Edward, and we think that needs to be changed because it's really lame. But that's not the point. Yeah, so they're all vampire-themed to an extent. There's a lot of coffin and fang puns and all that. So, yeah, it's fun. We'll see if I end up being the Vampire. I will be probably changing my name to something a little more menacing than Count Chocula, but for right now, it fits.
Vlad, the running back.
Yeah, well, we'll see. There's got to be something that can be done. But anyways, that's just quickly what a Vampire League is. We're looking forward to starting that. And then you did a draft on Flea Flicker, a public league. This is not a mock draft. This is a full league that Joel will play the entire season. And, well, he did his draft and he wanted to go over it during a podcast. So we are going to do that now. So, Joel, if you want to explain yourself, maybe give us the rundown of your roster and kind of what you were thinking, and then we can look into what was around you at that time and see if maybe it's the direction I would have went and go from there.
All right. Well, I ended up starting off with the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, he was the 12th pick. So he had the wheel of a 12-team league. So he had 12 in the end of the first round, and then the first pick of the second round, and so on and so forth the rest of the way.
And with the 12th pick, that's both good and bad. It's good because, of course, you can do the wheel and you get 2 picks in one. But the bad thing is it takes absolutely forever when you're looking at and it's going, you're up in 19 picks, and you're just like, but then when you get it, it's like boom, boom. So I, of course, started off with my first pick, one Austin Eckler, because I actually had a chance at Joe Mixon, but that might have been that was actually round 2. But actually, my first pick was Austin Eckler just because I figured wanted to start off with running back for 112.
Yeah. So looking at what went around you, we'll do your picks round 1, round 2, just because it does kind of play into how we're going to do this. Your second round pick was a wide receiver by the name
Two,
of.
two, 2-1. Stephon Diggs, pretty solid pick, I think.
Yeah. So normally, if like you were in the middle of the round, I'd say, okay, here's who went around you. Here's available. Since you had 12 and then 13, it's easier just to do this at the same time. So the picks right before him that he didn't have an option at were Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, all good picks. The ones that went after Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Travis Kelce, you mentioned Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson, and then some wide receivers, Hopkins, Metcalf, and A.J. Brown. Then we started getting to the first wide receiver, first quarterback, and a couple tight ends, Justin Jefferson in that round as well. So with what it went off the board, Austin Eckler, I think, was the slam dunk pick. You had to do it. Stephon Diggs, I can't argue with. At the end of the first round, or at the beginning of the second round, the end of the round, the wheel, I think it's better to take 2 running backs just because when you come back at the end of round 3, you may not have who you want there. I'm looking at your draft now, and I think you were just a little late. You got a little unlucky. They got too many of the running backs before your next pick, which was
Miles Sanders.
Yeah, at pick 312, again, what went right in front of him? Najee Harris at 3.7, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, 3.839.
Wanted Godwin so bad.
Godwin, I figured, was one of those on your board. Chris Carson and David Montgomery. I think with this draft board, there's a cutoff after Montgomery where I think the production goes down. Miles Sanders is the best in the next group, so you did as good as you could, but if Miles Sanders wouldn't have went and somebody would have taken, the wide receivers that came later, Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Robert Woods, DJ Moore, you'd be better off with Carson or Montgomery, but you can't do anything about what other people take. I do really like your 4-1 pick at tight end.
Yeah, because I was thinking I already had a W. I had an RB. I had a second RB. I had a WR. So I had to start thinking about team depth, and I decided to go with the tight end with TJ Hawkinson at 4-1.
Yes. So between your pick at 4-1 and your next pick at 5-12, only 4 running backs came off the board: DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Darrell Henderson, and Myles Gaskin. So there was not a whole lot of movement at that position. However, there were 6 quarterbacks that came off the board, which I think helped you immensely at 5-2. I love the Hawkinson pick. I think he's got sneaky upside to be the number 4 behind Kelce, Kittle, and Waller, who all went in the second round. He's got sneaky upside. I think it's going to be a good pick. The only other option there, I think, is Mark Andrews or take a chance at Kyle Pitts, who both went in the 5th round of this draft. But Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Justin Herbert all going between your 4-1 and 5-12. So you did miss. And again, this is part of the problem with drafting at the end of a round, either the beginning or the end. You can be left out of a big run on a position and end up in a tougher position.
And you also had Myles Gaskin go too.
Yeah, Myles Gaskin was in there. Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett. Some of the depth wide receivers went in that range. I like the Hawkinson pick, and I can't really fault it there at all. As we come back, again, after 7 quarterbacks come off the board between 4-1 and 5-12, you went back to the wide receiver well and got one T. Higgins. What was the thought process there?
Oh, just wanted to work on my wide receiver depth because I know running back depth is important. But if you don't have backup wide receivers, that's not going to help you much.
Yeah, and T. Higgins will be a starter for you because you have Stephon Diggs. He's going to be your number 2. Looking at the rest of your lineup, he will be a starter for you. He's going to be good. He's going to have a good opportunity with Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. It's going to be spread around just like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. Maybe not quite as effectively because Joe Burrow is, as far as I can tell, not Tom Brady yet. He will be a good pickup. The next receivers that went off the board weren't for another round and a half. It was Odell, Deontay Johnson, Cortland Sutton, Chase Claypool, Jamar Chase. Nobody really exciting. So I think that's a good pickup there. Then we go to 6-1 where you dipped your toe into the quarterback pool with one. Ouch. Ouch, it hurts. Yes. So this, I would say, is your first kind of misstep. Now, part of this is that, hey, you missed a 7 quarterback run between picks. That is unavoidable. But after that was Tom Brady, Ryan Tannehill, and Matthew Stafford. Of the four, I think Jalen Hurts is my lowest on that board, but he is definitely a tier above what went later, with Baker Mayfield being the highest there. I personally like Tannehill and Stafford more than but Hurts than a lot. Brady, I say this every year, but sometime age has to catch up with him, right? At some point, he's got to look like a 44-year-old man trying to throw a football against 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds. But it hasn't happened yet.
And then I end up going back to running back for my 7-12 pick for one Melvin Gordon. An interesting round that saw my nemesis wide receiver that I definitely want to avoid this year, one DJ Chark, end up going third.
Yeah, DJ Chark going in the middle of the round. What went between you was about 6 tight ends. You already had yours locked in, and 3 more quarterbacks. So really not a bad round. Nothing got pulled out that was that great. Your end of the line running backs did go in round 7 with your Kareem Hunt, your Mike Davis, who right now is the lead back in Atlanta. We'll see how long that goes. Damian Harris, Travis Etienne, which I think would have been the best one to fall to you in that spot, or Jerry Jeudy or Robbie Anderson, who went right after. Then Raheem Mostert right before Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon could be a very good pick, but he does have Javonte Williams down that backfield with him. Who gets more reps? We'll see. At first, I think it'll be Gordon, but is it going to be that way the whole season? That's the risk there. But overall, Melvin Gordon has an established presence. If Javonte Williams comes up, they may trade Melvin Gordon to a good situation as well.
Yeah, and then I ended up deciding to go to the back to a tight end depth and snags one Hayden Hurst from Atlanta.
That was round 9. Round 8, you had Mayfield.
Oh, Baker
Yes.
Mayfield. I'm missing. I'm trying to multitask here. No, so switching back in the time machine, that actually went Baker Mayfield first to round 8 as opposed to round 9. My bad. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Now, I don't mind this because you did get Jalen Hurts. You did get someone who I think is a little bit on the lower end. Baker Mayfield gives you at least a solid secondary option most weeks. And I don't see a lot after there that helps you immediately, other than possibly going Melvin Gordon, then Javonte Williams, just to secure that backfield. After that, it was a lot of just depth players. Deebo Samuel, Chase Edmonds, who could be a steal, could be a bust. You don't know. Juju, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, who's going to have a suspension, Ronald Jones, James Robinson, who may not be the starter at all, James Conner, who I just mentioned, Leonard Fournette on the timeshare, David Johnson will be a starter, but on the worst team. Some depth receivers. Michael Thomas down at 9-9 is interesting to me. I know he's going to miss some time, but if he comes back and is the Michael Thomas of old and he misses 4 weeks, that is the steal of the draft. If he's out for 8, 10, 12 weeks, it's an overpayment still. One of the people I'm surprisingly high on is Antonio Brown, went 9-10. And then Trey Sermon, I think, has some upside at 9-11. Then you already said it. Hayden Hurts, get that tight end depth. I think he's going to be solid. I think Kyle Pitts will be used more as a wide receiver. Hayden Hurts, the tight end. This will open things up for him as well. So I do like that pick. And then we get into some problematic things where you're kind of out of options here.
Yeah, because this is the point that really you're basically throwing the dart on the board pretty much at this point in the draft.
And you went to Baltimore, which isn't a bad strategy, to the best rushing team in the league, and took Gus Edwards, who is not the starter, but does have a lot of upside if J.K. Dobbins gets injured. By the way, J.K. Dobbins pick 3-2. If he goes down, Gus Edwards is the number 1 there. Unquestioned, he's going to get a ton of work, and he's very, very consistently
And we saw
good.
last year how bad the injuries were and how much all of a sudden you had backups and even third stringers all of a sudden arise to the front.
Yeah, not to mention the COVID concerns and all of that. What went after you that I may have went a different direction than Gus Edwards is Michael Carter, who went directly after that, who is possibly the number 1 for the Jets. I kind of like Devontae Parker. He's a number 1 wide receiver in the 10th round. Will Fuller will be good, but Devontae Parker's got a little more chemistry. Not that I like this player as a pick, but Kenyon Drake, 10.7, shows you how much he's fallen now after signing with the Raiders. And then after that, it was just a whole lot of nothing. I think the best, most interesting pick might be Jalen Waddle, because he's at least got some interesting dynamic to him, and we don't know what he is. So we go down. Now we're at 11-12. The 11th round pick for Joel is.
One J.D. McKissick.
So I know the buzz on Gibson is very, very high. And I think Gibson is worthy of being a second or third round pick. However, if J.D. McKissick gets the passing game work like he did last year, that's going to hurt Gibson quite a bit. If he doesn't, Gibson might be one of the best running backs in the league for fantasy. That is a huge, still to be determined what if. J.D. McKissick had, I think, some 50-plus catches and some rushing yardage. Some of that is because Gibson was a rookie. They didn't want to overwork him. But remember, Antonio Gibson was a wide receiver in college, in the pros last year, learning the running back game. So he does have the hands. I think they want him to focus on the running back stuff.
And right after McKissick, one Alexander Madison, one of the biggest busts of the waiver wire last year, if you tend to remember how much of a disappointment he was.
Yeah, the couple of weeks that Dalvin Cook was out, you think, oh, I can get a freebie. He went 12-9. It was after your next pick of Wayne Gallman, who I think actually is a very savvy, sneaky pick, because San Francisco has a very good running game, but they also have a bunch of guys who cannot stay healthy, Raheem Mostert being the headliner there. Wayne Gallman was great in release of Saquon Barkley last year, so that could be a good pick for you at 12-1. You did mention Alexander Madison, who was one of the last running backs off the board in this draft entirely. Then we had another run on quarterbacks. Burrow, Matt Ryan, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Tua, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Daniel Jones, all in that 12th round. And then round 13 was all defense except for one pick by Joel, which was
Isaiah McKenzie.
I don't know how I like this pick. I do like it. Isaiah McKenzie as a player. I just worry that he's not going to get enough snaps with Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, who you also have, and newly acquired Emmanuel Sanders. But he is a dynamic player. He's going to have his big weeks. He could be a sneaky good pick. And again, this is when people are picking defenses. This is a lottery ticket scratch off. Then we go to round 14, where you picked another Tampa Bay wide receiver, not the big ones, but
one Scott Miller. And it's interesting to see what the last quarterback was in this round who ended up getting picked.
Yeah, the last quarterback of this draft at 14.6 was Ben Roethlisberger. However, I think what might be the best pick of this draft, I did mention Michael Thomas at 9.9 has a good chance of being the biggest steal. Devontae Parker at 10.4. But for me, Nelson Aguilar at 14.2 could be the number one wide receiver for a Patriots team that might be getting rid of Cam Newton's crappy arm at some point and opening things up. The other rumor is Jacoby Myers is taking a big step, but he's still going to be one of the number one wide receivers for his team, either 1 or a 1A, and he went in the 14th round. So that's kind of impressive to me. And then the last round, we're not even going to get into it. It's all kickers. Boring.
It was all kickers.
So to kind of just recap and go with a starting lineup, hypothetically, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders at running back, Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins at wide receiver. The flex would be Melvin Gordon, TJ Hawkinson at tight end. I'm sure you picked up a defense, or you will before the season, and Ryan Suckup at kicker. So I think your starting lineup is going to be fairly solid. Melvin Gordon, a little bit weak, but he could come along later. But it's going to be tough. I think picking at the 12th slot, you went tight end early, and that was a little bit of a risk just from where you were.
I snagged that team that from Miami
that's a pretty good defense to remember last year correctly. So that'll help you.
I've heard they've had the football team the greatest in the land. I think
I believe that's how that song goes. So we'll see about Melvin Gordon as your flex. Again, the league is definitely not considered over on draft day. What you do on the waiver wires is going to play a bigger part than what you do in the draft. And of course, injuries. Like I said, J.K. Dobbins goes down in week 2, and you have Gus Edwards in round 10. He could be a league-winning running back. Same with J.D. McKissick and possibly Wayne Gallman.
The waiver wire really can save seasons, believe it or not.
Yes, you can draft a very good team. You can draft a playoff team. It is very hard to draft a championship team and not have to do work to it during the season. So I do think picking from the 12 spot did kind of rattle you a little bit once you picked Hawkinson because it got you out of the high-end wide receiver 2. T. Higgins is probably on the lower end, especially with all the traffic that'll be there. He'll get his touches. Some weeks he's going to be the biggest receiver on that team. Some weeks he's going to fade to the background. And then Jalen Hurts, again, just a little bit of a risk there. But if he comes through, he was very good in the 3 games he started for the Eagles last year. If he comes through, he'll be great. And then Gordon. So I think your top end guys are good. Your bench is going to take an injury or two. Antonio Brown goes down. Scotty Miller was great when he had the opportunity. But with 3 studs in front of him, will he? Same with Gus Edwards. Same with Wayne Gallman. Same with Isaiah McKenzie. However, you kind of handcuff Stephon Diggs, which is an interesting strategy to go to. And, oh, by the way, I'm trying to see. I don't believe Emmanuel Sanders got drafted, which is kind of impressive. If he's still on your waivers, that may be a good pickup should Stephon Diggs go down because he will go up and do the one. I'm just trying to check real quick.
Who would be good to drop for?
I would say Gallman or McKenzie, but it also is going to depend on when and if Diggs gets hurt. So if you want to pick him up in place of somebody, you pick up him instead of Isaiah McKenzie because you don't need 3 Bills wide receivers. But if in 3 weeks, all of a sudden you see, hey, Wayne Gallman is not getting touches in San Francisco, he can go. So that's kind of the thing you also have to think about is your timing. Overall, a pretty good draft. I'm trying to see quickly which team I like best.
McKenzie would be the red shirt to send down to the away mission.
Yeah. So there's none of these teams that really drafted anything I'm super excited about. There's one team that's starting running backs are David Montgomery and Raheem Mostert, which frankly is nauseating. Derrick Henry and Zach Moss. I like number 1, not number 2. So I think this is a balanced league. Everybody's got their strengths and their weaknesses, so you definitely have a shot. It's not like you ruled yourself out on draft day.
You would have to have a pretty bad draft day to do that.
Oh, I've seen it before. We last year when we did the little too serious draft, someone decided to draft all kickers. They're no longer in the league, and my wife Brittany is taking over. But that was kind of what sparked the Vampire League because they still won a few games. If they could have drawn a player, all of a sudden, well, maybe this is a team that could be competitive. So we kind of had a test run to an extent last year, so we're looking forward to doing it in full this year. All right, next we will get to our final thoughts because it's obviously us and we are going longer than expected. So Joel, after you.
All I can say is it's just finally good to have football back after you end up having the wall-to-wall baseball and the absolutely endless offseason of conjecture. And finally, you have a Hall of Fame game. You're talking about week 1, and football is finally on the horizon. And that's my final thought.
Yeah, definitely a good time for sports is this time when, yes, I know basketball and hockey aren't there, but they're coming back soon. You have the baseball playoff races coming up. And of course, you have the glorious wonder that is the NFL coming back as well. And if you're into college football, I guess that's coming back too. So a quick final thought on Evander Kane. What an idiot for even putting yourself in that situation a few years ago between playoff games against Vegas. He was out all night gambling, not on sports, but now he's accused of betting on not only NHL games, but Sharks games, which would be a grotesque violation, probably on par, if not worse than Pete Rose. And we know what happened to him. So very stupid thing. Even if he's innocent, didn't do it, not a good place to put yourself. Perception is often reality. So even if he's not guilty, the fact that this all came out and it was considered is going to be going against him at some point down the line. Next, though, Cleveland. Cleveland is a very sad place to live for the most part. Now, let's go back a few years when the Cavaliers were the biggest laughingstock in the league when LeBron James went to Miami. The Browns were a winless football team. And the Cleveland Indians were surprisingly in the World Series against the Cubs when they broke their 108-year drought. Now the Browns are good. Cleveland had a title, and the Indians have a new name, the Cleveland Guardians. Now, I don't like the name. I understand there's some roots in Cleveland that have Guardians in it. However, That's not why I'm bringing it up. Not because I think the name's dumb, not because it is a new name and Washington Turds do not have one yet. They're supposed to come out with one after the season. But the Cleveland Guardians, the new name for the MLB franchise, are now in a fight with a men's roller derby team who also called themselves the Cleveland Guardians. Somebody didn't Google the name before picking it, putting in licensing to the MLB, and now they have to fight over clevelandguardians.com with a men's roller derby team, something I didn't know actually existed until I read this story. So for a men's roller derby team, this is great news. They're going to get a nice fat payday from the MLB. MLB is going to get a lame new name, but that's what they want. And it's just going to be real, real dumb. And whoever picked the name and didn't decide to Google it is probably going to get fired. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised.
Does it sort of be like Highlander and there can only be one?
Yeah. If you sell merchandise, like if someone comes out and names their baseball team the Sports Shuffle, first of all, terrible name for a baseball team. Doesn't really make sense. A podcast, I get you. But we don't sell merchandise yet. We got to get a following. We don't do all of the other stuff that this roller derby team apparently did. So I guess that says more about us than them. But once you start selling merchandise, you register the trademark. Well, then it's a little harder to just give your team name away. And I think they're just going to be like, you're gonna pay us a nice sack of cash to have this garbage name, and we'll
That
just
would
go
be
and
like the line from the "Show Me the Money" that I can't say anymore other than that part of the quote.
Yeah. So, Cleveland, you found a way to fail at picking a new name that's not only bad,
Rest
but
of that
not
quote
available.
is not family friendly.
Yes. So the Cleveland, technically not available Guardians are the new name for the Cleveland baseball team. Hopefully, this has not happened with Washington,
who we're still waiting to find out.
Like I said, February of 2022, in theory, after the Super Bowl or probably Super Bowl week, they are going to come out with a name and branding and all of that. I know there was a trademark dispute with a gentleman who trademarked like 400 different names, sold like one T-shirt to friends on all of those names so he could validate the trademark. And that's it. So, yeah. That's how it goes. Anyways, we are starting.
I guess Cleveland hasn't trademarked a Factory of Sadness, if you've seen that whole deal.
Yeah.
With the guy yelling at the ballpark at the middle of the night.
Yeah. Anyways, we're going to wrap this up. We are starting the YouTube channel. I believe I'll be putting this one up either tonight or tomorrow. I'm lazy, so maybe not tonight. But it will get up there soon. It is the, what did I call the page? Sport Shuffle Official, I think is what it's called.
Official, unofficial?
Yeah, because I think there was someone who was like under Sports Shuffle from like 4 years ago, and it's like just one dude talking about an NBA play for like 5 minutes, and that's all he ever posted. So, yeah. We are under Sports Shuffle Official. Go over there. You'll see the same crap you're seeing here. But we may just pop in and do random stuff on YouTube because, well, my grandma wants to watch stuff
random.
that we do.
We're random.
Yeah, my grandma's like, are you on YouTube? I'm like, no, we're on Facebook. She's like, I don't do Facebook. You should be on YouTube. So now we're going to be on YouTube. All thanks to Grandma. So I guess we
YouTube and
apologize
Facebook, and it's like everything is like the Borg, pretty much.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see which one gets more followers and subscribers down the line because we're not doing so hot on Facebook. But we have fun, and damn it, that's what this is all about, right? Right. Anyways, that is our time as we are still somehow under an hour after all of the rambling and musings and just being Ryan and Joel.
Us on time?
Yes. So
when does that happen?
So, yeah, we will probably not be back until we start our draft week coverage, which I'm expecting to be next Thursday, next Friday, something in that range. And then we'll get into our full fantasy week like we did last year, where we have tight end, wide receiver talk, sleepers, busts, people you're hyped on one day, running back, quarterback another day, general draft strategy another, a mock draft, and then the 2 live drafts Friday the 27th.
What about brigadier general or colonel draft strategies?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I'm not going to top that, so I'm just going to say we going.